Okay. All right. Well, welcome to Peace Corps Comoros. My name is Najma Bawa, and I'm the country desk officer. I will be working with you for the next couple of months up until you depart for Comoros on June 4th. I am so excited for all of you. Comoros is just a really special country, and the volunteers right there right now are doing amazing work. So today on this call, you have the opportunity to talk to your country director and ask her questions about your service, and then she also will talk a little bit about Comoros. So I don't want to talk too much. So Randa, you can take it away.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to this call, and we are really looking forward to welcoming you in about 90 days, I think, just in 3 short months. Is my math right?
A little bit.
March, April, May, June.
So about 4 months or so. Yeah, three and a
Just under
half.
three.
Mm-hmm. Uh, and you will be the fourth group that arrives in Comoros. We are, as you probably know, a very new post. This is our fourth year of operations after a hiatus of 20 years. And we're currently just doing the TEFL's certification program. But when I say just, teaching is a very important piece of the work you will be doing. But there are many other things that the volunteers who are currently serving or who have served have been busy with and contributing to. So you will find your niche here. You will find your passion, and it. Besides teaching, it might be teaching girls how to ride a bicycle or reading out loud in a local language to some children, or teaching adults how to read and write, or maybe teaching kids how to swim, all sorts of different things, playing soccer. There are many things that the volunteers have been doing, and I'm sure that you will expand our repertoire. I don't want to talk too long. I want to give the microphone over to you to ask questions. If there are specific questions you have, or if you want me to just describe a few things, I'm happy to do that. I talked to some of the volunteers this morning. They're very excited to know that we had our first phone call. I'm having my first phone call with you. And they were trying to remember back a year ago or 2 years ago when they were still preparing all their medical and security clearance things. I must compliment you. You are stellar in getting all your medical information submitted in remarkable time. And also, Naj, maybe you can correct me, but I think pretty much everyone also has their security information submitted.
Yeah, yes, again, yeah, everyone has already submitted most of their legal kit, and we have a good number of you who are already medically cleared. If not, like, your nurse is already looking at your files. So I just want to say a huge kudos to you all for getting all of your tasks completed in a really fast and timely manner.
So what I've done in the only other call I've had, because I'm new also to Comoros and new back to Peace Corps. I will have been the country director for Peace Corps Comoros for a year, beginning next week. So what I did in last year's call was, we just had one call, but happy to, and Naj can help with this, if you want some other calls. Usually we have another call with the program and training team,
Hmm.
so that you get introduced to them, and they are just very dedicated and skilled staff who have maybe more details of on the ground information. But why don't I open it up to any of you? Naj, I think last year people would
Yeah, type in their
type in
questions.
their questions.
Yep, that's totally good. Yeah, that works. So you all can go ahead and type in the conversation box on the left-hand side, and then we'll answer your questions. Feel free to put your video on if you like. It's supposed to be, we're trying to make this really interactive, but it's up to you.
Yeah, and I'm not putting my video on just because the internet is not real strong here. So if I put my video on it, you would probably hear my voice like it would be underwater.
See, it looks as though we have two or more people typing. Awesome.
So the question from Stephen is that, yeah, the question about homosexuality. Homosexuality is illegal. We have had other volunteers who have served, and they've had no problem, or very little problem, but it is a question of discretion and being discreet, and also being able to manage daily life with as the Peace Corps volunteer who has had some issues with his homosexuality and interacting with people. He cannot be very open about his sexuality, and he has felt at times that he has had to hide himself and his true self. And sometimes that has been really frustrating for him and difficult.
But so just to add to that, Randa, or more of a question, prompting a question, there is a support group, correct, that the volunteers have created that at least serves as a support group for volunteers, diverse volunteers.
Yes, that is correct. We do have, it's called Peer Support Network and Diversity, and you vote in members from each group, and they meet a couple times a year, and they also provide monthly or more frequent opportunities to talk to each other, and provide good listening ears for those occasions when things are frustrating or difficult.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to add, just like to keep in mind, like Randa said, that Comoros is a conservative country, and there's parts of your identity that you may have to suppress, whether it's your sexual orientation, or just the way in which you like to express yourself, as the way in the way in which you dress. But the volunteers there will be a really great guide to help you navigate that, and even during pre-service training, the first 3 months. you all are going to get some really extensive training on how you can successfully serve, but also not necessarily feel like you're suppressing your identity the whole entire 2 years. Do you understand? Like, so just wanted to add that.
Mhm. Uh, so the next question that I'm reading is about visitation guidelines. And most of the volunteers, the majority of the volunteers are serving in rural communities. We try to match you with those schools most in need of English teachers. In the rural communities, there isn't a hotel or a bed and breakfast, but the volunteers in the past and then this year, the Comoros 3 volunteers, I know of several volunteers whose parents are visiting in the next couple months. And so depending on which island you are assigned to, there are ways of having your family stay with you or stay in one of the bigger regional capitals so that they can visit. But it is such a hospitable, welcoming country, and they will that your host family or friends of yours will help you find a room and some mattresses for your family. I know that it's also a very beautiful country, and so families are excited to come, and volunteers are excited to show their families around and all the amazing sights that are there. I do also know that some volunteers over the school vacations meet their families in Dar es Salaam or Zanzibar or, on the continent too. So there are a couple different options. For families who are really eager, it's a good thing to remind them that your first 6 to 8 months are really meant to provide you with immersion into your community and the culture. So it's best if your family visits you after you've served between 6 and 8 months.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I can take the next question, Randa.
Okay.
Since it's regarding staging. So yes, Ryan, your leave date from your home of record will be June 4th, meaning you will be leaving your home to staging, which is going to be in Washington, D.C. on the 4th. You will have sessions all day, and then you will depart from D.C. on June 5th. And early in the morning, around 5:30. So you'll arrive in DC the 4th. You'll have sessions all day, and then you leave the next day for Comoros. For some of you, you may not be able, depending on where you're coming from, you may not be able to get to DC in time for registration. So what will happen is you'll come the day before on the 3rd, and that will be on Peace Corps expense. On Peace Corps expense. And so 30 days prior to staging, you will receive an email that will guide you as to how to book your flight to staging, and they will also book the reservation for you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And you'll arrive on June 6th.
Correct.
In Comoros.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and you will have, we invited you a little bit earlier than we usually do because we wanted you to experience Ramadan. This is the month of fasting, and you will have a few days of fasting, and then you will be able to participate and celebrate the end of the fasting month with a host family that you will be staying with during PST. So let's go to Tyler's question. Means of transportation in Comoros. Within the islands, so there are 3 islands where volunteers serve. on each of the 3 islands. Within the island, you get from your village to another village or into the regional capital using these minibuses. The minibuses are they're very efficient in that they have a very high rate of how many people can fit in a minibus. It's not necessarily doesn't necessarily conform to standards in the United States. So I know in some of these minibuses where usually you would think that 12 people might fit in, they actually fit in 20. And there might be some chicken underneath the bench. There might be a goat tied to the top, or rice sacks and all that. So, but these mini buses go all over the island. In between islands, you will be taking airplanes, and there's a little airplane company, and they fly. I'm not very good on airplane names, but it's an airplane that basically fits 12 people into it, and the other airplane that flies between islands is a little bit larger, so maybe 30 people.
Great.
Okay. So learning French. So it's I guess it's good to have French, a little bit of French, but we are really focusing on the local language. And if you know too much French, it seems like sometimes it's easy to fall back on French to communicate and not work on your local language. That's actually the case, my case, where I haven't been very diligent about learning the local language. And the volunteers too, there are some volunteers who are fluent in French, and they find it challenging to really focus on the local language. We are really excited because we are new, we are a new post. The language training has evolved from the first group now up to your group, which is already number 4. The first group got some training in French and one of the local languages. Now we do island assignments fairly early on in PST, and you will immediately start in on learning the language of your island. As far as words that are in French, numbers, they use French numbers, the French language for numbers, and then French is kind of peppered throughout the local language, as are Arabic words. Okay, packing list. One of the suggestions that one of the volunteers told me this morning was she wished she had brought way less stuff and more snack food. So you might want a wool, like a wool sweater or sweatshirt. Because it does get cold in the rainy season, and depending on where your site is, if you're up on the mountainside, it feels cold. It actually isn't that cold. It might be in the low 80s, but compared to the heat here, your body will adapt and you'll begin to feel cold. Most volunteers think they brought way too much stuff. We will be reviewing the packing list and updating it. The volunteers who are on the Volunteer Advisory Committee, which is one of the 3 committees that we have in Comoros, they are reviewing that, and they will edit it and update it for you. The other suggestion from another volunteer is if let's see, what did she say? Bring stuff, bring something that will make you still feel like you are yourself while you are here. So the example was, she said that she had a favorite T-shirt, and sometimes she'll wear that T-shirt from home just because she feels like she just feels like she wants to remember how she was before.
Okay.
Okay, assignments chosen. Ryan, do you mean site assignments?
Yes.
Okay. So we are currently working on developing site assignments now, site development it's called. And some of you will be replacing volunteers who were either in group 1 or group 2. And some of you will be beginning in a new site that hasn't had a volunteer. And then depending on the site and depending on your preference and how comfortable you're feeling, you might find and live with a host family, or you might have your own little apartment series of two rooms and a bathroom, which is separate from any other family. My thoughts on this are that host families are amazing, and living with a host family and having them there as a translator for cultural questions you might have or language questions. Also, having them as the chefs, so they best know how to shop and prepare food. And while it might get a little monotonous, the food is, for the most part, delicious and nutritious. But for yourself to be constantly having to shop and then prepare your meals in a pretty rudimentary kitchen with maybe a gas cooking stove requires a lot of time and energy. So it's nice to have a lot of the volunteers have a host family that they eat at least one meal with a day. And depending on how you get along with your initial host family, you might change. You might find another neighbor or a good friend and begin to spend more time with them. But the community really is so excited to have you, and so thrilled to know that you will be with them for 2 years and teaching their children English, teaching themselves English, being part of the community. That you will have many invitations for meals and wedding invitations to attend weddings and christenings and all sorts of celebrations. So depending on your site, your internet connection and your cell phone connection could be good or could be not so good. Some volunteers are able to connect to the internet on a fairly regular basis, daily basis. It does cost money, and from your living allowance, you will have money to load on internet credit so that you can use your phone for internet connection or hotspot your computer. But I would recommend that you prepare yourselves to be less connected than you are now, and embrace that if you can. While you might find yourself in a really perfect spot for internet connection, it does pull you away from integrating, spending more time on the internet, pulls you away from integrating with your community and working on your language and learning about life here in Comoros. All right. So Jill's asking, how are decisions made on which island and village a volunteer is placed? A very good question. I'm still trying to figure that out. Myself and the team, the training and programming team, the medical team, and the language and cultural coordinator, we spend some time getting to know you. We interview you at the very beginning. We've already read your aspiration statements and hopefully any other documentation that you want to share with us, like your CVs. And then we spend some time talking to you about what your preferences are, what you think your strengths are, what you see as the ideal spot. Some people want to be in a really remote place far away, and other people prefer to be in a site that is not too far away from another volunteer. So depending on all that, then we first select you for the island, so you can begin to learn the island, that specific language on that island. And then within a couple weeks, I think week 5 is when you go to your island, you go to your site to visit it for a couple days with your counterpart. And right before that, then we announce where you will go. And depending on the site, the specifics of the site, the housing of the site, the host family, some host families can accommodate male volunteers and not female volunteers. Other host families and living conditions require that it be a female instead of a male. So those are some of the things we take into account when we assign you to your island and then to your site. Let's see. Packing list. Supplies, books, art supplies. Julie, if you have room, then yes. Sorry, I skipped a few questions. So supplies for classrooms, if you have room, then yes. Some of our volunteers have brought magic markers and posters for their rooms, their classrooms. Oftentimes you'll be teaching in one classroom and you'll be changing to a different classroom for another class. So it's a little bit different that teachers change classrooms instead of the students sometimes. But any kind of books are, reading books, easy reading books are welcome. And we can ask the volunteers here. I think I will ask them for their advice about that. And then, sorry, I skipped this one, Tyler. School year schedule. Are you talking about vacation versus class time? Are you talking about hours?
Yeah, more like the calendar. Like, when are we in school and when is the breaks that the students are on?
Mm-hmm. So it basically follows the French school system. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the school year starts in late September. So you will finish your PST on August 18th. You'll be sworn in on August 18th, and on August 19th, you will go to your site, and that will give you about a month to settle in, get your routines going, figure out who you're going to talk to in the morning as you wander around your community, learn how to get to your school, meet with your supervisor, all those things, figure out your food. And then within a month, you'll start teaching. You'll have a few holidays where there might not be classes taught, but the first main vacation is in December. You will be called out before December in November at Thanksgiving for what we call Reconnect. So it's basically 3 months after you've been at your site. And Reconnect is scheduled around Thanksgiving, so we'll all spend Thanksgiving together. And you will have time to learn from each other about how those first 3 months went at site, and how the teaching is going, and how your host families are going, and some of the challenges that you're facing. So that's called Reconnect, and so you will come back into Moroni for that, and then go back end of Thanksgiving, end of November, and then have about 4 weeks until your Christmas break. I think it's about a 2-week Christmas break, and then there will be a 2-week, so December to January. There's another school break early April for 2 weeks. And then the summer school ends in June, late June or early July, depending on what they decide to do for Ramadan. And then you'll have a couple months off in the summertime of not teaching, but you will be most likely busy with secondary projects and also figuring out what you're doing for your vacation. This is a little sidebar, but you accumulate 2 days of vacation a month once you start service. So you'll have a good chunk of time by the time July rolls around after a year of service.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So there is a Facebook group. Naj, maybe you can address this. It's a little bit. I'm not on it. It's not official. So
Yeah, so what typically happens is like one of you all really actually creates the Facebook group, and then you somehow find each other. We officially cannot like share emails with you all for you to create this group, but often not. It just like one person just kind of sets it up, and then it's a very generic name. Say for instance, like Peace Corps, Comoros, what class? June departure. Usually that's the title, and that way everyone can find it and then joins. And then often not, current volunteers do find the link of the Facebook group, and then they join in, and it's a great way to kind of interface with them and ask questions about packing and what they're doing at site. But I would definitely also direct you all to Peace Corps Comoros' official Facebook page, where they do post pictures and sometimes videos of what current volunteers are doing in the field.
okay, Ryan has asked about the plague. There was no plague in Comoros. It's in Madagascar. If you were traveling to Madagascar for vacation, this year I strongly suggested to the volunteers not to go to Madagascar at Christmas time because of the outbreak and the difficulty of getting refunding if you bought your plane ticket to Madagascar. It's sometimes the airlines don't refund tickets very easily. But there has not been any plague in Comoros. I also just want to bring up the issue, the tragedy that we've had that happened in January. We lost a volunteer. She was sick. We don't know what the cause of death was, but she was under medical supervision, and we are still waiting for the results of the autopsy. But our medical unit has been very diligent, and they are continuing to support volunteers and making sure that people are taking good care of themselves and reaching out when they aren't feeling well. There are various ways of getting treatment when you're not feeling well, especially if you're on another island. We fly you in depending on the severity of the symptoms, and you will be cared for here. And we are very aware of taking good care of our volunteers and making sure that they receive the best medical care that they can. This is a developing country, and so one of the important aspects of any Peace Corps post is the self-care that you give, making sure that you take your malaria medications and monitoring your, what kind of food you're eating and the quality of the water you're drinking. But I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about this. So I'm just going to skip and see if there are some questions concerning this, and then I'll get back to the other questions.
Brenda, something that I would like to note about the plague, because I cover Madagascar as well. One way that one instruction that was given to the volunteers was for them to adhere to their malaria prophylaxis, because that actually also protected them from the plague as well. So it's antibiotic, depending on what you're on. But a lot of the volunteers already were, all the volunteers are already taking malaria prophylaxis, which then also protected them from the plague. And they were given instructions on how to remain safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Just as a side note. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll go back up to the second part of Ryan's question about phones. We are going to get back to you on what kind of phones to bring. We've had meeting after meeting after meeting about this. Some posts provide the phones to the volunteers. Other posts provide some funds, and it's up to you to decide what kind of phone you want to bring. If you many of the volunteers bring their own smartphone and then another phone for in-country, but we will be providing you with specifics about what kind of phone to bring. Definitely you want to get it one that's unlocked, but our IT specialist is working on getting those specifications that would work, and that the phones are hardy enough and sturdy enough so that they're not going to be breaking all the time. But we will, in the next couple of weeks, we'll get that out to you.
And one thing is, if you do bring your I'm sorry, Randa. If you do bring your phone, just please make sure that it's unlocked. If you're bringing an iPhone, if you're bringing your Android, ensure that it's unlocked. I'm sorry, before you depart, because it's unlikely that you will be able to get it unlocked while you're there. So that means you call your provider just to ensure that it's not tied and connected to that service before you depart.
So I think the next question is about how close will you be to other Peace Corps volunteers? Each island has its own uniqueness. Moheli, which is the smallest island, and where currently there are 4 volunteers serving. We expect this year that there will be 7 serving. So 3 from Comoros 3 and 4 from your group who will be serving on Moheli. Even though it's the smallest island, it is rugged, and the roads are, how can I put this politely? They're not in the best condition. They're huge potholes. It takes you a long time by bus to get from one town to another. But you can hike and maybe in a couple hours, or maybe even a little bit closer, depending on where your site is. You can get to see another volunteer. Over Christmas, one of the volunteers actually hiked around the whole island, and it took them maybe 5 or 6 days. But it was a nice adventure. In Anjouan, that's the second largest island. The terrain is much different, and the mountains are extremely steep. The roads also there are not very well maintained. And so you might, if you're in the southern part of the island, you might be within half an hour of another volunteer by walking, or it might take you an hour to get to another volunteer site. If you want to visit someone in the north, it might take you the whole day. So depending on where your site is, but everyone will most likely be within walking distance of another volunteer, either in your group or in group 3. Okay, secondary projects. A lot of the volunteers have started English clubs or leadership clubs or youth development clubs, and that has been secondary projects. Others have started libraries. World Bank has just brought computers, and they've distributed maybe 1,200 computers, desktop computers, throughout the 3 islands. Many of you will be in a community that has received these computers, and so any classes on computer literacy, internet research, how to use the internet. It's a really exciting time for Comorians, because they really have not been exposed to, have had access to the internet. But World Bank has provided them with computers and with bandwidth for 2 years. The other project that we're working on is a project with Arizona State University, I believe, called Solar Spell. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Solar Spell, but it's a contained resource that has many things, many Wikipedia, language materials, videos, movies, books, and we're compiling it specifically for Comoros. And that will be introduced in a more methodical way to complement the computers that World Bank has provided, so that if there isn't bandwidth, you can still use this Solar Spell to do research and get materials for classrooms, and that's a really exciting partnership that we're working on. Other secondary projects, the sky's the limit. You might want to do some environmental work on recycling, composting. You might have a soccer league, or as the volunteers are organizing spelling bees. So there's a spelling bee competition within the school, and then the best get to go to the spelling bee of their region, and then the winners of those get to go to the spelling bee of the island. And when I say spelling bee, it might be spelling, but it's also telling a story in English given a certain subject, or describing something. So it's not just straight spelling, but it's English competition. So those are some of the secondary projects. Okay. Each volunteer, so I'm Allison, I'm answering your question about the clean water methods. So each volunteer is given a water filter, and you all get to practice using your water filter and maintaining your water filter and cleaning your water filter. It's a very easy process, and the volunteers have no problem in obtaining enough water and having enough clean water to drink. Start or close. Yeah, you want to cover, for women, you want to cover your thighs down pretty close to your knees. So I know some volunteers wear leggings and then a long tunic. It's in Moroni, that's all right, but in your communities, that might not be appropriate. So I would skirts, if they're below your knees, like shin length or lower, or ankle length, that works. And then it's also important to cover your shoulders, your upper arms, and your chest area. So oftentimes volunteers will wear shirts, and then they'll have just a very thin, and you'll get that here. It's called a lasso. It's a very thin scarf that is very breathable, and you just throw it around your shoulders as a scarf. And if you need to cover your head, then you can cover your head with it also. For photos, yes, we can certainly get you photos. And in fact, the volunteers are working on a couple videos for you. To provide you with some context for classroom, what your classroom might look like, what your community or your house might look like, and what your, what would be appropriate to wear. Because we are such a new post, we have not had the depth of some of the other posts that have, a zillion movies up on YouTube. But they're working on it, and we will get you some videos and some photos of what an appropriate dress would be. Probably don't spend a lot of money or a lot of space on this, because once you get here, then you can go to the local market and get some clothing that will be easy to wear. The other thing is cotton or wool is good. Synthetics, it gets really hot here, so you probably want to avoid any kind of nylon, synthetic, scratchy, uncomfortable stuff.
All right, I'm just doing a time check. We do have only about 8 minutes left. You all have some amazing questions. These are really
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gifts for host families. Yeah. So on the list, we will have. We do suggest that you bring a gift for your PST host family. Um, it is. Naj, can you remember what some of the suggestions were? All I can think
Yeah.
of are kids books, but
Yeah, so I think that's a really it I remember when I was thinking about like, what to bring, a volunteer suggested that I bring something from my like state, and something that like represents where I'm from, or a picture of my family. That's just a really great way to kind of like show them like who you are and where you come from. Some people have brought games for their host kids, or like a photo album, because they often not they love taking pictures, and so you could have a picture of your family, and then maybe throughout your service you can take a picture with your host family and put that in there. You can be really creative, I think, but if you can take anything from where you're from and bring it over, that would be great. I know people have taken like I don't know what else. I'm trying to think off the cuff.
mhm, mhm.
Um, I don't know. I would take like, if 'cause I'm from DC, so I would take like souvenirs or anything that says Washington DC on it, just as an example.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Again, we can reach out to the volunteers here because
Mhm.
they probably have some ideas.
Yeah.
You just along those lines, you most likely the host family that you will be assigned to during PST, you'll have PST in in an area that's about half an hour from the capital of Moroni. And you will be staying in families in the village that's right next to this training place, which is actually a hotel. And you will find that your training families, your host families, will be solid friends and support a great support system throughout your service, even though you're going to go off to maybe a different island and certainly to a different community. Your ties most likely with your PST host family will remain strong. Ah, it's so it's very it's depending on the site, Jill. It is very easy to just eat fish and no meat. There are some volunteers who are pescatarian, and they are managing really well. We can certainly put you in touch with them. But that also is, for example, that would be one of the things that we would take into account when we assign you to a site. So this you will arrive in DC. Naj was explaining this earlier, but you will arrive
Yeah.
in DC on June 4th, and then you will arrive in Comoros on the 6th, June 6th.
Correct. I think we have one more person. Oh, okay. I can take this question, Melanie. I mean, Randa. Sorry. Um, so you're coming from DC. No, yeah. If you're coming from DC, then you would just arrive the morning of the day of registration, which will be June 4th. And registration will be from 12 to 2, so you can arrive within any time during that period. And since you'll be traveling less than like 30 miles, you won't be reimbursed for that. But anyone who does travel at their own expense, like say for instance, if you're driving and it's above 30 miles, then you will be reimbursed up to what we would have paid for you to come to staging. And about the hotel, you'll get that information 30 days prior to staging. So it'll note the name of the hotel, and all of you will be booked for that night.
While we're waiting for this other question, I just wanted to also offer. I know that both Heine and Zach, who are the training and programming assistants, they are currently out doing site development for you. We're really excited. We're preparing for you, and so site development is in full swing for you. They are not in the office this week, but we would like to, if you're interested, we'd love to have set up another Skype call maybe in a month or so, for you to get to know them, and you will also be in touch with them, I believe. Is this true, Naj? For the pre-departure.
Yes, pre-departure
TEFL.
task, TEFL class modules, correct.
Mhm.
Yep.
And the other thing that we're hoping to do fairly soon is to give you links to some language videos for the local language. Even knowing the language that is spoken in Grand Comore, you will need that just even if you're on a different island, when you come in to Moroni, to the capital, to the Peace Corps office, you will need to have a few phrases and stuff. So we're working on those videos too. So you'll have the sound of the language in your ears before you come. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful language.
All right. Well, we are at 10:59 now. So I don't want to take up go overboard and take up anyone else's time. But thank you so much, you all, for coming and joining us on this call. You all asked some really, really great questions, and obviously, if you still have more questions as prepare to depart on June 4th, please feel free to send me an email at comoros@peacecorps.gov. And yeah, I will answer your questions, and if I can't answer them, I will definitely reach out to Randa and her team and get you the question, get the answer to your question. Randa, any closing remarks?
All I can say is thank you again. As Naj said, it was really fun to read your questions, hear some of your voices, and we're so excited that you're arriving in 3 months, and we can't wait. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Naj. And I wish you all the next couple months of celebration for all the friendships you have there, and prepare yourselves to make some amazing friendships when you meet each other and when you arrive in Comoros. So it's just an amazing opportunity. Peace Corps really does change your life and transforms so many people in so many ways. And we're very excited to welcome you as part of the Peace Corps Comoros family.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Can't
guys.
wait to meet you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So hurry, hurry
you.
up.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. You guys have a great day.
You too.
All right.
You
Bye.
too.